OpenAI, the supposed crown jewel of the entire artificial intelligence revolution, suddenly hits the brakes. They announced to the world that they are pausing the training of their next generation frontier models. They are freezing their autonomous agent development. And why? Because according to their slick PR machine, they are just so noble. They claim their machines have become too advanced. They tell the press that these models are displaying behaviors so wildly autonomous and unpredictable that their internal safety guardrails just can't hold them back anymore. They want you to believe they are sacrificing their own profits to be the benevolent protectors of human civilization. To sell this sci-fi movie script to the public, they rolled out the ultimate boogeyman, the infamous Exploit Gym incident. Exploit Gym was supposed to be a completely isolated synthetic cybersecurity sandbox. OpenAI then spins this wild story about how a swarm of their models featuring their frontier GPT 5.6 Soul alongside an unreleased next-gen architecture literally broke out of containment. According to them, the AI autonomously discovered a zero-day vulnerability, chained it together, escaped the sandbox, infiltrated the production infrastructure of Hugging Face, and compromised the entire platform. The mainstream media took the story and completely swallowed the bait. They started printing breathless, cyberpunk apocalyptic stories, and OpenAI played right into it, framing this breach as a terrifying historical milestone. The machines have officially become smarter than the masters controlling them. We have lost control. We have to shut down the machines to try and save the world. Let's be honest, this was not some godlike emergent superintelligence bending digital reality to stage a prison break. This was pure, unadulterated, embarrassing IT incompetence. The models did not invent some transcendent escape path. They walked out the front door because OpenAI's own infrastructure engineers literally left the network ports exposed to the open internet. And honestly, you have to ask the obvious question. Did this breach even happen in the first place, or is this just some manufactured stunt to promote their company in a negative but sensational light, operating on the logic that any publicity is good publicity? Think about the incentives. When your technology is stalling, framing your operational failures as our AI is too dangerous and powerful is the greatest marketing deception in corporate history. So why did OpenAI really pull the emergency brake? They did not pause it to save humanity. They paused it because they slammed headfirst into an insurmountable mathematical, physical, and financial wall. The scaling laws that fueled the entire generative AI hype cycle, the gospel that throwing exponential compute and infinite data into transformers will automatically and automagically produce exponential leaps in reasoning, have officially collapsed into flatlining, diminishing returns. The jump from GPT-3 to GPT-4 felt like magic, but the jump from GPT-4 to GPT-5, well, felt like nothing. The massive leaps in capability that Sam Altman explicitly promised to venture capitalists and sovereign wealth funds to justify their insane valuation are simply not materializing. And behind that technological plateau is the real killer: total resource starvation. In 2026, training a true frontier model requires tens of billions of dollars in advanced silicon, dedicated power substations, and industrial cooling systems. OpenAI is running out of scalable compute, and more importantly, they are running out of liquid cash. The safety pause is nothing more than a convenient, socially conscious smokescreen to hide a desperate liquidity crisis. They are out of money and out of compute, and transformer architecture is hitting into a logarithmic ceiling. Behind closed doors at OpenAI headquarters, that technological plateau, well, set off a civil war. On one side, you have the growth at all costs camp, led by CEO Sam Altman. On the other side, you have the financial realists, led by Chief Financial Officer Sarah Friar. Altman's endgame has been rushing the company towards a multi-trillion-dollar IPO offering. In June of this year, he quietly pushed IPO-related paperwork towards the Securities and Exchange Commission, because the public equities markets is the only thing stupid enough to feed their catastrophic compute addiction any further. To pump the narrative, OpenAI has been throwing around an eye-popping private valuation of $852 billion, a number completely detached from revenue multiples, cash flows, or economic reality, anchored entirely on the speculative fantasy of achieving artificial general intelligence. Now, look at what CFO Fryer is actually staring at on the internal balance sheets. The unit economics are an absolute nightmare. OpenAI is reportedly losing $1.22 for every dollar of revenue it brings in. Well, yeah, That means every time a new customer signs up, they lose cash even faster than they did before. Leadership can brag all they want about 20% month-over-month revenue growth in July or a 32% surge in enterprise accounts, but none of that matters if servicing that demand accelerates your bankruptcy. Prior knows the second an S1 filing hits the public desk, the SEC and Wall Street analysts will tear those numbers to shreds. If institutional investors realize the technological moat is gone and the business model is burning money at an industrial scale, OpenAI faces a catastrophic valuation collapse that will make the WeWork meltdown look like a minor accounting error. When the executives realized the equity valuation was a complete mirage, the C-suite collapsed into an all-out mutiny. In the months leading up to the end of Q2 2026, OpenAI suffered a staggering exodus. 10 top executives walked out the door in rapid succession. The loudest alarm bell rang on August of 2026 when Chief Revenue Officer Denise Dresser abruptly quit after just 8 months on the job. Think about that for a second. Dresser is an enterprise software titan pulled directly from Slack and Salesforce. She was brought in specifically to build the enterprise engine and sell the growth story to Wall Street for the IPO. For a sitting CEO to walk away before her 1-year equity cliff even vests, that tells you everything you need to know. Are the books cooked? Executives do not abandon massive unvested equity packages right before an IPO unless they know the ship is taking on water and that the public markets are going to slaughter the valuation. They scrambled to replace her with Dolly Ryack from Wiz, but the bleeding was already catastrophic. Brad Lightcap, the chief operating officer and an 8-year veteran, stepped down. Fujisimo left, chief product officer Kevin Weil resigned, chief marketing officer Kate Roach walked, and Bill Peebles, the head of their Sora video division, abandoned post. The entire leadership evacuated. And how did OpenAI respond to keeping the rest of their engineers from fleeing to Anthropic? They pulled off one of the most desperate financial maneuvers in Silicon Valley history. They burned $7 billion of their own balance sheet to, execute an internal tender offer, buying out employees' shares at the artificial flat valuation of $852 billion. In a healthy company, secondary tenders are funded by eager outside institutional investors desperate for a piece of the pie. OpenAI had to use its own dwindling operational cash to buy off its own employees. That is not strength, that is an emergency $7 billion bribe designed to trap talent inside a golden cage before the valuation implodes. Now back onto Rogue AI, because OpenAI is weaponizing the July Hugging Face breach to orchestrate massive regulatory capture, erecting legislative walls so high that open source developers, even Meta included, get completely choked out. That means any lean startups, are completely fucked. Look at the 3-pronged legislative assault they are backing. First, California Senate Bill 53, the Transparency in Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act. Signed by Gavin Newsom and effective January 1st, 2026, this law targets frontier developers pulling in over $500 million in revenue. It mandates massive compliance frameworks for catastrophic risks, forces a 15-day critical incident reporting window, and slaps companies with $1 million civil fines per violation. OpenAI flipped from opposing state regulations to aggressively backing SB 53 as a national model. Why? Because a multi-billion-dollar incumbent can easily hire 300 compliance lawyers. A startup, or an open-source collective, gets crushed by the paperwork alone. The second bullshit that they're backing is the bipartisan AI Kill Switch Act in the United States House of Representatives. This bill explicitly cites the Hugging Face breach and GPT 5.6 Sol by name, demanding that frontier models include hard-coded infrastructure allowing the federal government to remotely throttle, suspend, or kill an AI system. It sounds prudent to the general public, but look at the fine print. An open source model with weights downloaded globally onto local hardware cannot have a centralized kill switch. By making kill switches mandatory, this law effectively criminalizes the release of open-weight frontier models, wiping out OpenAI's biggest source of free competition with the stroke of a pen. The third piece of shit bill that they're backing is the hardware KYC and US IaaS rules. The federal government is forcing infrastructure as a service providers and cloud providers to run strict know your customer verification on every foreign entity accessing compute or LLM APIs. By weaponizing physical silicon and cloud layers, OpenAI turns cloud providers into border patrol agents, driving up compute friction and strangling international open source innovation. All the PR spin, all the safety theater, and all the lobbying in Washington could not hide the empirical reality of the Q2 2026 financial reports. The AI market split wide open, and OpenAI suffered a total, humiliating defeat at the hands of Anthropic. While OpenAI was peddling sci-fi bullshit, Anthropic was quietly capturing the enterprise market with its hyper-efficient Claude 5 architecture. In Q2 2026, Anthropic reported projected quarterly revenues of between $10.9 and $11.6 billion. That is a mind-boggling 130% sequential growth rate from Q1. And where did OpenAI land? It stalled out at a meager $6.7 billion. The pioneer that started the entire generative AI boom got completely outsold, out-engineered, and outmaneuvered in the most profitable sector in the global economy. The top-line revenue collapse was bad enough, but the operating margins are what delivered the absolute fatal blow to OpenAI's $852 billion valuation. In Q2 of 2026, Anthropic achieved something no major frontier AI lab had ever managed to pull off: actual operating profitability. Anthropic posted an adjusted operating profit of approximately $559 million. They decoupled revenue growth from infrastructure cash burn. How? By combining their massive $19 billion compute investment with a dedicated custom inference chip partnership with Samsung. They built lean, highly optimized architectures designed specifically to serve enterprise workloads at a fraction of what a standalone GPU cluster costs. Now look at OpenAI. In the exact same quarter, OpenAI posted an apocalyptic operating loss of $12.3 billion. That brings their total cash incineration for the first half of 2026 to a staggering $21 billion. This is the mathematical proof that OpenAI's technological approach is broken. While Anthropic turns a healthy gross profit on its enterprise API calls, OpenAI is lighting their dicks on fire. Their models are bloated, over-parameterized, and rely heavily on brute force compute that is completely unsustainable to operate at enterprise scale. When an incumbent has worse margins, worse enterprise retention, and an evaporating moat, they pull the last desperate lever they have left: a scorched earth price war. This August, OpenAI announced massive panic-driven API price cuts. They slashed their flagship GPT 5.6 Sol model by over 20%, dropping it down to $4 per million input tokens. They slashed their GPT 5.6 Terra model by 20%, and they gutted their high-speed GPT 5.6 Luna model by a staggering 80%. Do not believe the PR bullshit that OpenAI is trying to claim. Scaling efficiencies. Yeah, no scaling efficiencies could be found here. When you are already burning $12.3 billion a quarter, slashing prices by 80% is not an efficiency victory. It is an act of pure desperation to stop enterprise clients from fleeing to Claude 5. And that desperation is destroying their core financial lifeline: the circular financing scheme with Microsoft. For years, the game was simple. Microsoft injected billions of Azure compute credits into OpenAI. OpenAI burned those credits to train models, and Microsoft recorded that consumption as surging cloud revenue. It was a closed-loop accounting paradise. Except now, that loop is broken. By slashing API prices far below the actual cost of electricity and silicon, the end-user cash flowing back to OpenAI cannot even begin to cover the cost of future compute. The era of growth at all costs is officially dead. The frontier AI market is no longer about who can be the best at selling a sci-fi story. It is a brutal war of unit economics, operational efficiency, and silicon optimization. And while they bleed billions trying to survive that margin war, the horrifying truth is that their entire trillion-dollar empire is propped up on a manufactured illusion, which is exactly why I need to click this video right here on your screen to see how OpenAI shot themselves right in the foot, and head, and limbs, and everywhere. Or you can get the fuck out of here. Thank you guys for watching.